Welcome to Semi-Sages of the Pages, the writing podcast where we're not sure where we're going, but we're having an adventure.
This podcast contains adult themes and language at times.
At times? What fun is that?
And discretion is advised.
Welcome to Semi-Sages of the Pages, where we're so excited to talk about today's episode topic, which is creating healthy, productive writing communities. I'm Morgan. Woohoo!
This is Molly. You can't see video here, but I am dancing. I'm entertaining the other Semi-Sages with my sick dance moves today.
Her eyebrows.
You always entertain us. And I'm Teresa.
Physical comedy.
There's like a lot of dancing happening now. And Sarah is not with us for this recording. She is taking a well-deserved vacation, and we are still jealous.
And still grateful for her when she comes back.
Very much
Yeah.
so.
I think what we've learned so far, because we're on a recording schedule, we have to record in order to produce episodes for you guys. And what we learned so far in our first one we recorded without Sarah is that we miss Sarah and we need her.
We really do.
We don't function as a tricycle. We need to be an ATV.
Which is what led to our topic today, creating healthy, productive writing communities, because she is part of our community and helps add balance to our community, right? So I'm really excited to talk about creating healthy and productive communities, because I find these to be two wheels to my bicycle, in the sense that I feel like writing is like riding a bike, right? Like sometimes I'm a little off balance, sometimes I hit potholes, sometimes I'm flying down the road feeling like queen of the universe, but always I need my tires. And I feel like part of the writing community is that front tire of healthy, good people who are my cheerleaders and care about me as a human and care that my writing gets better. And then the other part is people who are also productive and will hold me to task and say, hey, you still have to produce, you have to get stuff done. And like will also critique me. What do you think of my metaphor today?
We can expand it because it's not just that. If you have a small group, that might be like a very intimate kind of thing where you're doing stuff, but there are writing communities other places. We just talked about Flights of Foundry, which is was a community. If, they have a Discord, so it's a community around, but that, weekend was a community in and of itself. You have Twitter. Like Twitter has a writing community aspect involved in it, which, as we all know, can sometimes be a healthy place for some people. And sometimes, and a very toxic, unhealthy place other times for other people. There are communities in terms of writing organizations. There are all sorts of different places where writers can gather to do different things. Some of these communities have different purposes. They're not all. Frequently, they're about productivity, but sometimes they're about support. They're about finding people in the same genre as you. Things like that. So it's really a large encompassing topic.
And you can have your community. You can talk about craft. One of my favorite things that I've been doing on my Facebook is if I'm like, oh, shoot, I need a bottle of wine and I don't feel like Googling it. Hey, people out there on Facebook, what's a good bottle of wine? I've asked about occupations. I asked about, in the sequel to Warehouse Dreams, I've got a character who leaves small gifts on another character's doorstep. And I kind of ran out of ideas. I didn't want it to just be flowers. So go to Facebook. Hey, what are some ideas of things you could put on people's doorsteps? And I got some wonderful, wonderful suggestions and some weird suggestions too.
But weird can be fun because that can jar creativity too.
Exactly. So there's a lot of things you can use community for is kind of my point.
Okay. So when we're talking about writing community, we're talking about sparking creativity. We're talking about emotional health. We're talking about being each other's cheerleaders? What are we like not talking about? What things do you find to be unhealthy or toxic in writing communities that like are red flags to you that maybe this person isn't a good fit or this group isn't a good fit?
When the community wants to bash someone else, especially when that person leaves, like, someone leaves and then everyone's like, oh, I don't like so and so, or oh, so and so is not good as a writer, or blah 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 blah. And to me, that is, I don't like that. Especially because like I've had conversations with people on, oh, so and so doesn't take critique well. How can we help them take critique better?
Mm-hmm.
Or something like that. Like those I think are okay because the focus is on what can we do to support this person.
Make them feel more comfortable, right? Make them feel more accepted. Yeah.
And the honest to goodness truth is that not everyone in a writing community is at the same level.
Right.
And that is okay. That is okay. And you have to understand it and accept that sometimes, especially at the beginning, you're going to be at the bottom of the level or the bottom. And that's okay. And what's really helpful, what's really negative is when people on the community are like, ooh, can't believe they're here. Can't believe they're doing this or blah, blah, blah. They're not good. What I found productive and good is when people say things like, okay, you're here now, but how can we help you elevate? So I know the first critique group I ever joined out of Indianapolis when I lived there, I was not good at a lot of things. And my grammar was not great. Like I did not understand how to punctuate dialogue. It's actually a really common thing that a lot of newbie writers don't understand is how to punctuate dialogue. It's not as straightforward as one might think. And I had, instead of making fun of me, instead of saying, oh, you're stupid, go away, don't come here, I had someone go and say, Molly, this needs work. Let me help you. Let me get you there. Let me tell you some resources. Let's work on it off camera, so to speak. And that was helpful. So that's my number one red flag is when it's kind of like this catty atmosphere.
Yeah, you suck. So don't come back.
Yeah, well, you're not worthy to be here. You're not a real writer.
Time. Yeah.
I want to refine the idea of levels a little bit because I'm not sure, like I do think aspects of writing are hierarchical in the sense that for grammar, for example, you acquire it. But even within grammar, APA and MLA are wildly different. MLA is changing comma rules yearly to keep themselves paid, right? And to keep making money so they can throw out new books. And there's divergence even within the editing community about specific aspects to grammar. So I find that the problem could lie in the idea that you're looking at levels alone. For example, one of the things I really don't find to be wild is people's hierarchical thinking about voice. I have been in a couple of writing situations where first person is looked down upon. And so rather than saying, like, does this voice meet this story and it doesn't meet your audience, first person is very popular in middle grade. And it's very relatable in both elementary and middle grade. So it's like, I think a perfectly acceptable, even desirable choice for that age range. I also think it can be a really desirable choice for a romance novel or a thriller where you want to get close, like in the mind of your protagonist. I think it provides this intimacy. It's really, really beautiful. And I have seen really strong first-person writers, super voicey, but use more simplistic prose, get trashed by third-person literary types who think that their style is inferior because they just have a different preference. Mm-hmm. And so I think sometimes a lack of awareness of reading multiple genres, of understanding what styles best serve what audiences can lead to critiques that are very, very, as one of my best friends says, unhelpful. and a preponderance of unhelpful feedback can create, I think, harsh feelings.
Oh, Absolutely. I mean, going back to that point of view thing, I saw a giant Facebook thread that the person that started it said that people who write in first person are lazy. They're lazy writers. And I'm like, excuse me? Because I write in first person. It's a very intentional decision I make because I write from the psychological viewpoint. I write characters that are struggling and I want to dig into their brains and into their thought processes. Not literally, not like with a spoon, but
Yeah.
Love it.
And I have to, since we're on the first person train, and I know all of us write it at various points.
I write both, yeah.
Right? That really angers me because first person can be really difficult. And the biggest thing about difficult is how do you tell a whole story and make sure your reader knows everything that's going on, even when your first person protagonist might not.
And those scenes you don't want them to be part of. The use of dramatic irony, right? Where the audience knows but the protagonist doesn't. That's really difficult to execute in first person and execute well.
Like you have to do a lot of planning in first person to make your story work. And so it doesn't feel artificial and that first person narrator isn't like eavesdropping at every door so that they can hear the information.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's harder to write that way, but I like it. I actually would like to. I think I'm going to start playing around in some of the anthologies that I'm a part of, start playing around with third person just to kind of stretch out a little bit, but it's not better than the other. It's just different.
Well, and third person as somebody who writes both frequently, third person has a real challenge with getting that intimacy and getting voice.
Mm-hmm.
It is much easier, I believe, to do voice in first person because you're in that character's head and it's easier to catch their colloquialisms, right? And to use their expletives and just those little tiny things add so much to coloring the world with the type of voice that you want to use. When you move to third, I think it gets a lot more challenging to get the kind of modern voice that's really desirable in the markets right now.
Of this particular thing that apparently we should have just titled the episode first person. I think
that's common in writing. Every writing group I've been in has had this come up.
Yeah. So I think our first kind of warning flag is, or red flag, whatever you want to call it, is writers who think they're better than other writers for whatever reason. Maybe it could be differing styles, differing genres. I've had that. And age sometimes. I've seen that. And I've seen people, publication records. Some of the best writers I know don't necessarily have the most publications under their belt yet. And that might sometimes is a personal choice. They just don't want to be published. They haven't been published yet or whatever is happening. Publication is not necessarily a sign of what makes a good writer or not. That's my dog.
Okay, so let's take that red flag and turn it to a green flag. So how can we not be that person? Because it's easy to see it in other people and harder to see it in yourselves. And I think the first part of that is you can learn from every writer. I think the second part of that is to ask questions. I think too often we're not asking the question, who is your target audience and who is your genre, what genre are you writing in? And being really clear about what the log line is so that the story best serves the log line. And if we're doing that as critique partners and we're doing that in our communities, we're serving the author, but we're also expanding our own knowledge because none of us are experts in every genre. None of us are experts in every target audience. And we have a lot to learn, I think, from each other. And I think just coming into our communities with this perpetual desire to learn creates a kind of warmth, that also allows us to transcend those levels and helps us role model for each other, I think.
Yeah. And the other part of that too is everybody has to start somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I wrote my first story. I was probably, 6 or 7. That story is probably not going to be very good. I wrote another one when I was like 14. Again, oh yeah, I mentioned it on Discord. It was a Robin Hood thing.
That's right. Retelling, yeah.
Yeah, and that was my first one with like chapters and like I actually thought it through. I'm going to guarantee it was not very good, but you have to start somewhere.
And everybody has strengths and weaknesses, and we really see that as we balance each other out. I mean, I think we are. Shout out to our good friend. Help me say her name right, Molly Marvelosa.
Catherine.
Oh, is that? We're not going to use her actual Discord name. We're just going to call her name. Okay. Shout out to Catherine because she is brilliant at grammar. Just so gifted at grammar. And she's so kind not to shame anyone, and she's so careful, like when she critiques people. And so she looks at like our common mistakes that our little alpha writes, and is like, "Oh, honey, you're so grammatically challenged." And I'm just like, "Oh, you're so gifted. Thank you for finding it so fast." And sometimes, I'll be honest, don't read as tightly because I'm like, she'll fix it. She'll find it and she'll fix it. So I'm going to work on plot or tension or dynamics because I know my girl's got me. And I think that is such a great feeling to know that, like, I never feel judged. I always feel like she cares about me as a person and as an author and so does my manuscript. And it's so wonderful to be in a group with someone like her. Like, it's just so great.
I try to come with the approach of like, everyone has a unique story worth telling.
Ooh, I like that.
And my job when I'm in a writing group is to help that person tell their story in the best way possible. And whatever that story is, that's their story. What can I do? Maybe I can help with a grammar thing. Maybe not. I'm not the best grammarian. Is that the word?
Yeah, that's right.
We'll make it a word if it's not.
It is.
It's a pretty awesome one.
I'm okay. I'm fine. I understand most of the rules, but I'm not like the top level. But I can help there. Do they need help in pacing or tension or something like that? Whatever
blocking.
It is.
You're blocking.
Whatever it is, like I am there to help them. And not everyone has the same background. You know, I'm lucky that I grew up writing a lot. I'm lucky that I grew up in a really good school system, that I had the time to look at this. I had the time to join. I've been in critique groups for over 10 years now. Like that is a privilege that I have had in my life. And not everyone comes to the table with those kind of privileges. So we should help them. Like, we should be like, okay, this is a welcoming community. We're not all starting at the same place. We're not all the same age. We're not all the same background. How can I help you? How can our group help you tell your story the best way? Because you have a unique story in your soul, and maybe more than one. And how can we help you? Because to me, grammar is just a barrier, and sometimes it is just a block that you have to overcome. And once you overcome it, then you can have a clear story that people can understand. But if you don't you can learn grammar.
Mm-hmm.
You can't learn what your story is. That has to come from you. Did that make any sense?
No, it totally did. And it was interesting as you were talking, I was thinking about, other presentations that I've attended or group talks that I've attended. And sometimes, people will ask questions. And sometimes people are just starting out and the questions are so incredibly basic to some people's views. But those questions are still valid because it takes a lot to ask a question in a group. It takes courage to be like, I don't know what that means. I don't know what planting versus plotting means.
Right.
I heard that at a talk at a convention, and I'm like, what is this? And then everyone's sitting there nodding along, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to ask. Now I of course know what that is, but if somebody was to ask and kind of get the like, psh, well, I guess you're not a writer if you don't know what pantsing versus plotting is, that's going to shut that person down so hard.
Well, and also just with the tech, how it's always changing and the platforms are always changing. Oh my goodness. every time I go to a writing convention, I'm even just like the updates of Scrivener, like listening to, we were just on the Discord and we were, I think you were talking to Chris about speak to text, different ways to dictate your novel, right? And that the tech curve on that is happening so fast and everything's changing so quickly that I think another part of being a healthy community is making those questions a warm place for questions of all levels, but trying to keep each other up on the technology and on different parts of the process that work for you, which is one of the reasons I just love our Discord so much, because people are always saying, hey, the new update of Scrivener came out, or I'm using, what's the text to talk that's getting really good now? My friend Raquel uses it, just something with Dragon Speak, I think it might be. And the new updates, I guess, are like incredible. So people who've never been using dictation are starting to use it now. And I feel like that is a great way to use your writing community for productivity, to talk to other people. Like, I just learned about this new thing. Let me share it with you. I get so excited when people do that on our Discord. And I'll be honest, a little embarrassed because I'm always learning stuff and I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, I should be up on this. And I love that good, healthy communities take that feeling away. You know, they're like, no, Morgan, there's too much. You just do the best you can and you share and we'll share. And with all the new conferences coming out and all the technology and all the agents changing and the big 5 publishers going to big 4, I mean, just those categories alone are almost a full-time job to keep up on. So I think what I love about writing communities is different people can kind of form their niche about what they're following and inform us of the big changes so we can feel like we're keeping up on it together.
On that subject, very concrete example, I don't really write short stories, but I have a short story that I wrote. I wrote it a while ago. I think it's quite good. I want to put it in the short story market, but I'm not there. I don't know how the short story market works. So I went to our Discord, which we have quite a few people who have published in the short story market. And I was like, hey guys, I'm sort of aware that there's a market. I kind of know one of the tools, but I don't have like 20 stories. I'm not looking to do this, like, you know, pivot my career to short stories. Can you guys give me a help on, you know, where might be good to start for this? And bless them so much for just being so open and forthcoming and there was no shame. There was nothing of that. They were just like, hey, let me send you some articles. Let me send you a link. Let me give you this strategy. Hey, I can help you do this. Hey, do you want to swap? If I read yours, maybe I could suggest a place that might like it. That kind of warmth was so positive and I really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. And let me tell you, this is a lot. If you decide to go indie or with a small press or something like that, the whole like Readsy versus InDesign versus Word, but then Word doesn't work in Ingram unless you embed it, but then it's really hard to embed on a Mac. It's like, yeah, but then once you get it down, then you're like, oh, it's so easy. You just click, blah, 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 whatever it is. But getting to that knowledge base is hard, and you need somebody to be like, come here, I'll help you. Mm-hmm. And if people are constantly being like, no, you don't use Readsy, you use InDesign. What are you, stupid?
Right.
That doesn't help. That doesn't help at all.
And that's just the same in actually writing your novel. So I'm stuck on chapter 3 in my Rome novel, and my bones are good. I know my bones were good. My writing group told me my bones were good. But there's just some beats I'm missing in this scene because it's a lot of setting, a lot of new characters, and a lot of differences in the characters. Like I have young characters and then older characters. I have fear and humor, and I'm trying to mix them together because it's middle grade. And it's just really, really challenging for me. And I was getting super frustrated. And Molly's like, breathe. We'll go through it beat by beat. And I know it's going to be fine because we will literally go through it sentence by sentence with my friend who I can be vulnerable with, who will say, honey, this is working. This is not working. And it's not about me. And it's not about my ability to be a writer. I know she's not going to judge me. We're just going to take what's on the page and we're going to move that scene forward so it serves the story. And like, that is when you have a truly healthy, productive writing community, when you can get right to the meat of the novel, right to the writing, and be able to move your egos aside and get the best out of it. Molly, I know you want to say something. Jump in.
I think you said something really brilliant here, and I want to make sure people understand it. I think the best groups that are really there supportive for craft and building writing and talking like discussions like this, you have to have a lot of level of vulnerability. You have to be willing to be open and vulnerable, and you have to be able to put your ego aside. And when someone can't do that, they're going to have trouble. They're going to have trouble getting the best out of a writing critique group.
Well, and it goes both ways too. Not only if you're like, I'm putting my work out here to be critiqued. And you do need to put your own ego aside. Sometimes that is really hard. It truly is.
It's not easy.
No, it's not. But then it also goes to the other side too of when you are giving critique, you need to put your ego aside too and kind of be like, all right, is what I'm saying helpful to them? Am I saying it in a helpful way? Am I taking my own biases into account? And by biases, I mean first person versus third person. Target. Like I just sent Molly a note about hers, and I said, "Hey, heads up. I personally don't like it when authors do this, but I'm not your target, so whatever." But that's me saying.
Ooh, but that's an aha moment too. So let's just talk about what's so positive about that. Okay, first, you were still honest. Because one of the caveats of what you're saying is that you self-edit to the point you hold back something that author needs to hear. So it's a balancing act between, because another problem can be when your friend is so kind that they're thinking something, but they're second guessing themselves to the point that they're not fully telling you. And then sometimes that's even more, can cause more damage, because then you're getting rejections from the slush pile from something your friend knows, but it's so self-edited they're not saying it. So you're still saying what you think. You're still adding that to the dialogue, but you're saying, but I'm not sure, but here's my reservation about this. So it's like this full transparency, like, here's what I think. I might be thinking this because of this, but I still feel this way. So maybe check in with another beta reader. Maybe check in with somebody who is your demographic and see how that comment resonates with them, which gives so much power to the author to investigate further how it is or is not working, that aspect of the story.
Golly, thanks. No.
and I want to put a point here. Like, if you are asked to give feedback for someone, or you join a writing group or something like that, if you have feedback in your heart, in your mind, that you don't give because you're too worried about seeing mean, you don't want to seem mean, you don't want to be rude or whatever it is, that is real. I can understand it. It's very real. It's very hard. But the other flip side of it, it's like telling your friend they look good when they have spinach in their teeth and they're going to walk into an interview. Like, for many of us, if we're trying to get published, or we're putting our stories into submission piles, or going small press or anything like that, or even indie publishing, like, this stuff gets judged, and you are the first line judgment. And if you say it looks good, we put that out to more people, and then the greater world gets to judge us. So I personally would rather be judged by my friend now and be told, you have spinach in your teeth, go fix that, than to send my stuff to an agent or put it in a submission pile or indie publish when I have the equivalent of spinach in my teeth and the whole world can now see me and judge me.
I think that is some really authentic love. And I also think that it's really important that you have the conversation with the author as the beta or alpha reader. What am I reading for? And what are you ready for? So in an alpha read, I might be looking for characterization, scene development. Am I hitting the beats? And it's also good as an alpha reader, I might add, to know which structure the author is using. Are we using Blake Snyder? Are we using 3-act structure? Are we using hero's journey? Because then I also am tooled into like what beats I'm looking for in the scene. But like me telling you about grammar that early is maybe not as helpful unless it's like glaring and I need to throw a period here, or something that's not so important. The flow maybe would be a better example. So I think.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's great.
I wanted to say, we actually did a whole series about what to and not to do when giving and receiving critique.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I think we should just leave it there. Tell people they can focus on that. I want to switch and talk quick about like social media groups like Twitter. Have you guys found those to be healthy or productive environments in your experience?
Not productive.
Yeah, no, not productive. It's a time. Well, no. I'm going to take it back. So I don't hang out much on Twitter. Facebook, I hang out a fair amount on. I have found Facebook helpful in learning about what's up and coming. Learning about that. Amazon's going to be doing Vela, which come to Discord, we'll talk. And then being like, oh wait, what's Radish? So in kind of that has helped me kind of stay in the industry know. But in terms of like creating that community and asking for help, I've seen a lot of very supportive people, and I've seen a lot of not supportive stuff at all. I've seen outright bullying on Facebook. I've seen, and I think we talked about this in another episode too. I've seen people throwing up private screenshots of private conversations and being like, "Can you believe this person said this?" That's between the two of you. No. Why would you do that?
So let's talk about two sides of it. So the first side is, Teresa, you talked about bullying, and when that kind of gets unhealthy, do you challenge that on Face, or do you just get out? Are you a fighter or
I just get out. Yeah, and I will, depending on the situation, I may block people and be like, I don't want to see your stuff again. I usually just try to get out. I don't comment. I don't participate or anything else. Because I don't. I mean,
you don't feed the troll.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I could try to be like, no, you're not being very nice here, but Molly's right. You're feeding the troll at that point.
Yeah,
it doesn't do any good, unfortunately. If I've seen some people put up like snippets of their work and be like, can someone critique me? And then you look and it's like 150 comments. And if I skim them and it's a lot like, this sucks, I may go ahead and put in a like, hey, you received a lot of feedback. Hang in there. Here's a couple comments of good stuff that you're doing. Like that type of thing, especially if it's been very, very negative. But otherwise, I tend to just be like, peace out.
I find...
Go ahead.
Yeah, I find that to be... I don't know. I have a difficult time. I do pretty good on keeping the health of the community. Like, I love people. I'm pretty positive, and I've been really blessed that in my life I'm surrounded by positive people. But I find it to be a huge drain on my productivity. So even conferences that I love, like PitMat or Pitch Wars, or things that I love seeing what people are doing, and they're so creative and wonderful, I find I lose full days to that, and a lot of times don't even write that day.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I think social media can be a huge time suck because you feel like you're working because you're talking about writing,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it really is an illusion. Yeah, if we're talking productivity, maybe you're like, hey, I'm 2% productive because I'm on social media talking about writing. Well, maybe you need to be 100% productive actually writing.
Yeah. I'm on Twitter sometimes, not often. I used to be a little bit more involved in like the writing community on Twitter, but what I found was so much of it is like people just posting writers lists or authors lists. If you're not familiar, basically someone will just post a thing and it'll say authors lift or writers lift today. Drop all your links below and retweet it. And so the person who starts it, like, it's good in some ways because when you do one or you participate in one, because let's be honest, we all have, you drop your links, you put a little bit about who you are. A lot of times you'll get some more followers, that kind of thing. But it's
some retweets.
Yeah, but it's not real engagement. Like, it's not I don't think I've ever had more people listen to the podcast. I don't know if you, Teresa, have ever sold a book that way.
I don't think so.
It's like, it's a good way to like in a moment make yourself feel better about yourself. Like, ooh, I'm getting tweets and I'm getting relikes, but there's nothing real behind it. And then it's like, I get this feeling, especially on Twitter, that everyone is just trying to like leverage each other to market themselves more.
Mhm.
And it just got kind of exhausting to me. I have occasionally found people on Twitter to connect with, to be beta readers,
Yeah.
to exchange stuff with. I've had one really, really positive interaction. Shout out to Ryan if he's listening. He beta read Salted Feet for me. We still connect. He is
Aw.
great. Like Ryan is wonderful. But I've had 3 or 4 interactions which were like complete duds. And we did maybe exchange some pages, but it was, it was complete like whoosh, because we didn't know each other. You're not able to be vulnerable. I give a lot of feedback and that scares people. So I think I scared people away. All that kind of stuff is just, it wasn't a good environment for me. And I don't really I'm still on Twitter, but I don't engage with it in a way of trying to build community really anymore, because I know that it doesn't feel genuine or authentic to me at all.
So while you're talking, I want to play a little game with you. So I made a list, and it was sparked by Teresa's 2% productivity comment. And we'll talk about it. And then maybe, I don't know, this is something that maybe we could put out there on Discord and see what our listeners think. But which of these do you find like most productive and least, and kind of rank them in your head? Tell me what you think. So here are the things I thought about as a writer for productivity: critique groups, actually writing, going to a workshop or watching a YouTube video put on by a writer or an agent, reading in your genre, attending a live conference like Flights of Foundry.
I feel like I need paper here. It's just also really interesting because I do different, like they're different productive.
Correct.
Like they're for different things. I'm trying to think, because I get a lot out of just writing. But sometimes when I'm stuck, I need other things. I think I like doing number 3, but I don't think it makes me super better.
Yeah, me too.
For those listeners out there, what's number 3?
Workshops, YouTube videos, podcasts. The thing about it is I use them to be productive in times where I wouldn't be productive. So they're useful because I use them at times when I'm like driving or cleaning the house or doing like a mindless data entry or something like that. Like I'll have one on in the background. So on the one hand, like I'm not being writing productive, but it allows me to be like learn something about writing in a time where I otherwise wouldn't at all.
The other thing about that is it helps me stumble onto things that keep me in the loop, which are really important. So in that way, I learn about conferences. I learn okay, time to show how silly I am. I'm in the querying trenches, and I didn't know about Query Shark until Flights of Foundry. So now I'm like obsessing over Query Shark and feel absolutely silly that I didn't know about Query Shark.
Oh, don't feel no. Nope. I'm going to take that away. Don't feel silly about not knowing about stuff.
Right.
Again, this goes back to everyone's at a different level, and I cannot believe the amount of stuff out there about writing. It's kind of crazy. So okay, so I actually wrote mine out of my most to least productive.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So most productive. So we're going to go most to least, and I can kind of go around and kind of some of the middle ones here. So most productive is writing, then reading, because I learned a lot from reading. Then I said podcasts, but I feel like the podcasts are more in like knowledge gathering.
It's like more research.
Right. Exactly. So very helpful because I'm like, oh, I never thought of it that way. So then I did workshops. I find workshops, if I actually do the work of the workshop helpful, but I also
Mhm.
tend to panic in workshops and conferences where they're like, all right, so let's all share together. And I'm like,
Me too. I'm like, ah!
Yep. No one look at me.
yeah,
Yep.
no, I'm good. I'm good. But I find value in listening to other people share. And then I'm like, well, shit, I suck.
You know what's exciting is we're already getting feedback from our channel, and actually writing is by far the most productive, and social media is like everyone's agreeing by far.
Yeah. I put
But,
social
like-
media in one of the last ones. Now, I'm going to say something that you guys are going to thoroughly disagree with.
Say it.
I don't find critique groups helpful.
Oh, yeah, we are. I am. In fact, I went back and forth between that as my 1 and 2, but I'll be 100% honest. It depends on who I'm critiquing with. So I know for a fact when Molly and I sit down with our piece of whatever we're working on, when we're done with it, our reviews go way up. And we've seen it from agents. We've seen it when we submit. So I know that I have to write it, but I know that I don't want to send it out until I have 2 specific people, Raquel and Molly, that when I'm done with critiquing with them, I have grown as a writer. Like, I feel like I get to sit with a professor.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
And not that Molly tells me what to write. That's not how it goes.
No, yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know how you feel about that, Molly. But,
So I'm gonna add a caveat to that. I find critiquing, both me giving and receiving, valuable. I don't find value in sitting around in a group.
Oh, that might be different too than what we're talking. Yeah, okay.
And
good.
I think it really depends on the group as well.
Yeah.
It can be really dependent on the group and really dependent on the mix and who's there and all sorts of stuff. Because I've had critique groups that I have not. You spend 2 hours and you review like 5 different pieces, and then you leave and you're like, what did I learn today?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing, because one person talked the entire time.
Right.
Yes.
Or whatever it was.
And that may be that I've tried a couple of different critique groups and I've been like, nah, not for me. And it may be I just haven't found the right group. But again, my time is so incredibly valuable that if I lose 2 hours and walk out and being like, I got nothing out of that, I'm not trying again.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is I'm a big proponent of do what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing something that works for you, which it clearly is right now, don't listen to like somebody else. Don't try to adapt somebody else's style when you're jiving and you're going great and you're like you found a stride. Like, don't try to adapt somebody else's style when you're doing well and you found something that works for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I like that too, because it's about creating it's about your authentic vulnerability and knowing what you need in that moment. And it changes too, right? So we're going to rank this way today. And then like right now I'm at a writing block and struggling. So I feel like I'm more vulnerable and dependent on my critique group. Molly's shaking her head because she's like, yes, you are.
No. I'm agreeing with the thought. Like, when I get stuck, doing a sprint can really, really help me.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not stuck right now. So I ranked it pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
But when I am, I rank it really high. When I feel like I'm not very technical and I need to do better and I need to understand plot structure or this or that or learn something, then I'm going to go turn to workshops and YouTube videos and podcasts, because it's like I need to learn something. I need to do research.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm at a point where like I just want to see how people are doing it in my genre right now and see what I can absorb, I'm going to go read.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are different positives for each of these, and there's different like ways that we use them.
I feel like it's almost like seasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this season you're in, I think it's in the Bible, but it's also in the Tao, right? Tao. The idea that whatever you're needing in your life right then is what you want to focus on, or what allows you to stretch and enhance the most, and how it's always changing. But I do notice that everyone is saying writing is the top and social media is the bottom, right? So there is a consistency here that if you're not practicing, you can't improve. And so you have to put pen to paper. You have to make yourself do the actual work. and that social media maybe is not the most helpful in it. Like, I just love what you said, Teresa. I'm just going to double back. So you said it's like makes you feel productive, but when we do that reflection piece, probably not, best serving our productivity or even maybe our emotional health.
Yeah, the emotional health aspect is huge too. I mean, how many times I mean, you inadvertently compare yourself to others. That's just human nature.
Mm-hmm.
And it is challenging sometimes when you're on social media to see writers that are like, I just published my 45th book this year. And you're like,
Yeah.
I know I cursed earlier, but I won't. But you're just like, okay, I'm struggling to get one book out a year.
Yeah. And you're so excited for them and you love their work maybe and you want everybody to be creative and to share their stories and we truly are excited for our community. But you want to be able to participate and be an equal participant in that community.
What you said.
And feel valued, right? I think that's one of the biggest frustrations is when you volunteer for something or you put yourself out there and you don't feel valued and you don't feel appreciated and they don't treat you like your time and effort and insights. Maybe they don't treat you the same as that other author who sold more books or whatever,
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's also, though, and this is something that anybody who works with me in my other life knows that I do. I'm constantly calling people out. Like somebody sent me an email the other day and she goes, I'm such an airhead. I forgot to clock in. No, you're not an airhead. You forgot to clock in. Take that word out. You forgot to clock in. It's not a big deal. Who cares?
And Teresa, you're really good because you catch me doing it off and you're very good at saying no. The self-deprecating crap has got to end. And you make me do it. And I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It does. It has to end. And it's something we not only as women do, but I think we as creatives do a lot. Oh, here's my book. It's not very good. Could someone read it, please? No. I mean, yes, I'm happy to read it. But no, stop with the it's not very good.
Or I'm sorry, you probably won't like it. I'm sorry if it's bad.
Yeah, how not only are we trained, thank you, to downgrade our endeavors, but this procrastination piece. So Jasmine has her critique group a little lower, and she mentioned it's because since she's the person in charge of the group, it's easy to procrastinate. And I want to know, do you think it's better to just force yourself to submit something to your critique group even though it's not right yet? Or do you think you should hold it until you're really proud of it? Like, where do you think that bright line is? Because I know I struggle with that a lot.
To be perfect.
What do they say? Perfection is the enemy of
productivity.
Productivity, yeah.
I find that having a deadline for a writing critique group in and of itself is one of the best things for me because I like the artificial or whatever deadline. Like I like to meet those and it helps me to meet these deadlines. So I will work and then submit to it. And that makes me more productive because I then do the writing for the thing. Or I'll do I usually have like a big chunk written. Like what happens for me in writing critique group is I have like the whole book written or most of the book written. And then I will take like chapter by chapter, section by section every week. And it is a great impetus for me to do editing. So I'll be like, oh, I need to send my chapter to critique group this week. And I need to edit it so it doesn't go raw because it's bad.
But then I edit it worse than it was before. That was my real story this week.
It's worse.
Yeah. They really drug down tone and were a problem because I didn't edit in the right character voice and the right mental space I'm writing middle grade, so I can really only edit when I'm in middle grade mind.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. One other thing as we're kind of wrapping it up, if you guys have questions for us, I know there are people in here, so drop them in the thing. One other thing I want to have on here is the danger of a writing group becoming a social group, which is
Yes.
great in its own way. But how do you just like a couple minutes and then as we're doing this, questions will come in. How do you keep those two separate, or do you keep those two separate at all?
But right before I answer that, can I just mention Eustacia's talked in, I hope I'm saying her name right, in the chat. She had a really great point about how editing and critique groups need to stay true to the spirit of the work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wanted to shout that out because I think it's really a nice aha moment. So I actually struggle with this because I'm a very social person and I want to be friends with everyone. And so I have a difficult, you both know. So this is something that you could teach me more about.
I can tell you strategies that previous groups have done, which have
Mhm.
worked. So again, that writing critique group that I was part of in Indianapolis, they had a very good strategy that they actually met. They had 2 meetings, and one meeting was critique meeting. And when you went there, he had things already ready to be critiqued. People had already read them, and that was critique night. But then they had every Friday night was write nights. So you would get together and you would write. We would be at like a Starbucks, and it was, people would be social. Some people would just take the time to be productive. And then we'd go to dinner afterwards and have like writing discussions and be social. So like the splitting it worked really well. And then the group, one of the things that the group I'm currently in kind of does is we try to have like a writer sprint for 30 minutes at the beginning. And then if we have that 30-minute sprint at the beginning, everyone is in like writing mode when we switch to critique.
I like it. That's a good idea.
Mhm.
Honestly, I've never really thought about it. I don't know. I'm gonna say I've never really thought about it because I enjoy talking with people, but I'm not quite as gregarious as Morgan is.
No one's as gregarious as Morgan is.
And so I'm just kind of like, if you want to chat with me about social stuff, we'll chat about social stuff. If you want to chat about writing, we'll chat about writing. If you want to connect to me on social media, connect to me on social media. If you don't, you don't. I don't care. And so maybe I'm just better. I suspect I've never thought about this. I may have pretty good boundaries, and part of that is because I'm an INFJ, which means that I'm a very strong introvert, which means y'all suck my energy dry. But I like to behave like an extrovert, and I like people a lot. And I think just as I've gotten older, I'm really good about being like, y'all energy suckers, just bye, see ya, and I'll talk to you when I want to. So maybe that's part
You
of it.
also set time limits. You're very good about saying, I have this time to dedicate to this, and being really clear about your boundaries. And I've learned that from you, and it's helping me a lot about just saying, because I will stay with someone forever. And I don't know if it's the teacher in me or I'm the opposite. I love people. They feed my energy. I love the connection. And so it's good for me to learn to say, I have to be somewhere else at this time. Or it ends up eating into sleep and eating, really, like actual health of my, who I really am. So
it really can be. And again, I love people so very much, but you're absolutely right that just having a conversation with someone, it can take up a lot of time and a lot of your energy. And if you're like, okay, my number one priority is writing, and then you look at your day and you're like, I spent the entire day chit-chatting with people.
Yeah. So I think that's really important, I think. And then I also like the idea of, we submit these sample pages. And so we have to get to those pages. So in our current writing group, we'll sometimes start chatting, and then somebody will be like, hey, it's already such and such time, and we have to get through these pages, and then setting the deadline. And that helps.
And we set a timer.
And it helps balance it. It's so nice because you still want to communicate. I mean, I love that. I don't want anybody to think that I'm not the person who doesn't love to chit chat, because I obviously am. But like you said, strong boundaries are important for those of us who are more extroverted so that we can be more productive, that we can make sure that we're spending our time on the page. So what are our final kind of wrap up thoughts about this?
I think my final kind of wrap up thought is there are a lot of groups out there. They do different things. Not everything is a critique group. Try to find spaces that are healthy for you
and productive.
And productive.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes you get stuck in certain situations, and that can be hard. And it can be hard to try to change the culture of a group.
Mm-hmm.
But always trying to, I think our advice that we've talked about is, attempt to keep your growth mindset, attempt to try to stay positive, attempt to try to, boister the people around you, and avoid people and groups that are energy vampires or people who try to belittle others for reasons they think are important, but reasons that I think are fairly arbitrary.
Yeah.
I think what I'm going to say is my takeaway is that if you're listening to this and you're like, I've tried, I've put myself out there, I am so bruised, I am so hurt, but I still, I feel like I need a community, please come join us on our Discord. We really are just the friendliest, nicest group. If anybody, and we haven't had this happen, but I guarantee if somebody gets snarky or mean, we're kicking them out. Okay, you have our promise at that. And if for some reason we miss it, just ping us, and we'll take care of it. But please, if you're bruised, if you're hurt, if you're like, I need a community, I need people to help me with my writing, please come join us. We're here, and we're awesome.
All right. I think that is a wrap for this episode. If you like this episode, go ahead and give us. Why has this become my thing?
I don't know.
It used to be my thing was if you forget all that, it's all on our webpage, www.semistagesofthepages.com. But now I'm on, if you like this podcast, make sure to give us a 5-star review. It helps other people find us and share in our discussions.
Because it's a lot of words, and I might get confused.
No, not allowed to do that, Morgan. Stop it. But what was so funny about what Molly was saying is that I remind her to do it. I hold up my hands. I'm like,
yeah, she's always like, and I'm like, I'm on it, Teresa. I got it.
And I
okay, no more reminders.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Don't stop doing that.
Anyways, to wrap up our episode, we're on the social medias. It's not the healthiest, but Discord is. Come hang out. And and check out our website, as Molly already said. I forgot. But we're awesome. Come play with us.
That came out strange. All right. I'm just going to put those. The episode is over.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Semi-Sages of the Pages. Music used in the introduction was the song 5 Armies by Kevin MacLeod, which you can find at incomptech.com. It is licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0, which can be found at creativecommons.org/licenses/by/3.0. Whew, that's a wrap.
Come play with us. We're a lot of fun.
Craig is here. He's always here.